Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today. Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the issue of white flight, or it's just a generic term that's thrown around. I don't know. It's not per se an issue in Australia, but I believe it has been, or is, or was, or continues to be an issue in parts of the United States. But I can talk about the experiences certainly that I've had, and particularly since mass migration has began. Now, just to start off, I don't particularly care who lives next door to me. So what? Big deal. But I do care about how they behave. That is an issue. And so now, if I'm living next door to a certain group or race or type of people who are always misbehaving and disregarding what I think are social norms, then I have a problem with that. If that difference in behavior, that disruptive behavior happens to come from a certain racial group, then I will make that association that whenever someone of that race moves in next door, that they will behave typically, I mean, you might find exceptions, but they're going to behave in such a way. And if I ask them nicely, can they do something about it, they'll threaten me or become particularly hostile and start throwing garbage in the backyard, my backyard, this sort of thing, and become super antisocial. But the idea of somebody of any color or whatever moving in next door, I don't care. It makes no difference to me. But their behavior does. So when we talk about white flight, are we talking about there's a brown or black guy came in the street? That's it. Everyone has to move. All the white people have to move. No, it's not about that. And the people that try and pretend that that's what it's about are themselves the racist Nazis. The reality is that people have different behaviors, and they see themselves as being immune from accountability for those behaviors. And that's where the problem is, and that's the basis, the genesis, if you like, of white flight. Now, say for example, I'm playing music, so I'm playing some music, and the neighbour complains it's a bit loud. Now, if they've been particularly sensitive to my requirements, or if they're always playing loud music, but say, well, you can't play it, but I can, that'd be a problem. But typically they come in and knock on the door saying, hey, Billy Bob, look, my mother is, my ill mother is staying here, and, I understand you're right. Do you mind turning it down just a little bit? Is that okay with you? And so, I would comply immediately, not because I want to. I think, well, hell, if you brought your sick mother to stay there, that's not my problem. And I'm going to keep the music at the current volume. Why don't you fuck off? I wouldn't do that. I want to get on with them, but I also want to be sensitive to their concerns. Not that I would comply with everything, by the way. But okay, I'll turn the music down. It's no real skin off my nose. I'm not sacrificing anything. I'm not being put down or in some way marginalised, whatever. So I'm happy to do that. And they've been, and it can work both ways. There was the next door neighbour was using they bought a new chainsaw, got another chainsaw, and it was really loud, and they were using it quite early in the morning, and I let it go for a while, but they were, I'm not sure what they were doing. So when I was passing by and they were out in the front yard, I said, oh, by the way, that chainsaw you're using is really noisy, and I think they would have known, but nonetheless, they said, oh, okay, well, on a Sunday, would it be, can we, if we start a bit later, would that be all right with you? So you can reach an accommodation with neighbours. They're all white, by the way. You can reach accommodation with neighbours like that, or most of them. It doesn't mean I haven't had difficult neighbours in the past. I have, but who are white. But the point is, you can usually sort something out just by a pleasant, cordial discussion. Do you mind if, and would you be so kind as to not do such and such and so, or and so on, or even neighbour dispute type things, like one neighbour just a little while ago, they had a tree that was looking in their yard, which was looking rather unwell, and then there was quite a decent storm came through, and they blew that tree into our backyard, and there was damage to the fence, and the tree was there. I could fix up the fence. I thought, no, I won't bother with that. I'll fix the fence up, and because one day I might need their forbearance, and so I'm prepared to. And I said, well, look, that tree's near. Will you help me cut it up and take it out? And they said, sure. And they came over, pretty much straight away and helped me with that. I was out there cutting and carrying as well, and so it was all very, very congenial. It's different, however, with some other racial groups. They perceive that you're putting them down, you're oppressing me, and they've been taught to think this way. They don't see anything as a reasonable request. They see it as a put down. It's a threat. It's a challenge. Are you daring me? You want to fight? You want to fight me? Is that what, they tend to go down that path very quickly. So it's much more difficult to arrange. But their behaviour is different. Now, there was a house just a few doors up the road that the government was renting out on a long-term basis to put, I don't know whether they're illegal aliens or refugees or whatever the fuck it is, but I think it was refugees, put refugees in, and these were third world peasants, and they were sort of drunk on all the goodies that were around. In the rich first world, they were given free houses, free mobile phones, free this, free that, free everything, and so in their cognizance, their sort of attitude, if you give somebody that many gifts, it means you're the superior. The receiver of the gifts is in charge. I'm in charge now. Well, why else would you give me all these gifts? It's very third world type attitude and understanding of things. Their reasoning power is not, and the idea of having to get on. Well, I don't have to get on with you because I'm in charge now. Well, that's why you're giving me all these things. The government's giving me all these things. Your government, which means they're putting us in charge, not you. And so they've got these strange notions, and they're not disabused of them by any means. In fact, quite the opposite. They're taught by every NGO activist around, including government operatives, those white people are all Nazis trying to get you. They're Nazis. They're all Hitler. And so they have some preconceived notions which are not helpful to good social relations. So there are a few doors up the road, and they somehow get hold of like a go-kart or something like that. And they effectively take over the street. So the street belongs to them. So people who want to come and go in their cars and so on, these brown people aren't going to take that disruption. The car can damn well wait until they're ready, when they may not be. And they make demands. Well, why don't you park it down the road somewhere and wait till we finish what we're doing? And they go, no, that's my driveway. I want to be able to get to my driveway. This is a public street. Oh, but we're using it, and you can damn well wait. So, and on top of that, they decide that they're going to go to bed at, because they don't have to get up early. They go to bed at 2:00 in the morning. So they're playing loud music, and they're all sitting outside on the patio or on the back deck and talking very loudly and raucously. They're getting drunk and they're on the mobile phone to their tribal brethren back in some third world shithole, and they're screaming down the phone again. So making people can't sleep. So they get asked, do you mind being quiet? Can you turn the music down? I've got to be up at 6 in the morning to go to work. Don't you try and fucking tell me what to fucking do. You want to fucking punch in the head, mate? Yeah. You've get and on it go. They're not very responsive to quite polite requests. So things become heated, and maybe there's a bit of pushing and shoving, threats of. So then they decide that you're putting me down. I'm going to get back at you. But they don't see it as this. They say, well, I'm only sticking up for myself. White boy's trying to put me down. Yeah, he's trying to put me down. Asking me to be quiet at 2:00 in the morning. Yeah, he's trying to put me down, the fucking Nazi. Yeah, and so they're going to. So they decide they're going to throw all their beer cans and bottles and everything in your backyard. That'll teach the white boy. That'll show him not to fuck with us. So they're not very responsive to these things. Now, this went on, with different brown people coming in over a period of months, and given the amount of complaints, the amount of times the police came, finally the government relented and decided this is not really working out. So they gave up, the whatever lease they had on that place. Now, that's an example of different behavior. I don't care that they're there. I don't give a shit. But I do care about their disruptive antisocial behavior. That is an issue. And the inability to reason with them, that will you please not be making noises, serious noises that you can hear blocks away at 2 o'clock in the morning. Do you mind not playing the music that loud at 2? Do you mind not shouting and screaming on the patio? And these are not unreasonable, but they do see it as unreasonable. You're putting me down, you fucking white fucking Nazi. And so they respond, you're disrespecting me. And they just behave differently, and they refuse to accommodate the reasonable request, and don't see why they should. Why should they bow down to you? I'm not crawling on the ground for you, you white motherfucker. And it's very much that sort of discourse. Now it goes beyond. There were, we were renting, and I've mentioned this before in more than one video, but my wife and I were renting an apartment pretty close to the downtown, because we had quite a few contracts there that were quite intensive. We're having to start early and finish late and this sort of thing. So we thought, well, we'll try and get as near to the action as possible. So renting this place. It's only a 12-month rental. But again, the same thing. The government, without getting the permission of the people, was bringing in all these Pacific Islander folks. Now, some of these islands, they're barely out of the Stone Age, for fuck's sake. And they're always having riots. They're always having machete battles in on the dirt roads, and they get these people, then bring them into Australia. I mean, what do you think's going to happen? Seriously. And they're very tribal, and wider family and tribal, and everyone's got like fifth cousins of the family and so on. So they bring them into Australia, give them free housing and all this sort of stuff, and they put them in some apartments just near where we lived. Now there's a very nice park across the road, which had like gym equipment in it, outdoor gym equipment. It had barbecues, outdoor seating. It's very nice, and the council kept it very nice. And these people are not used to apartments. These islanders are not used to apartments. They're used to straw huts and things like that. A flushing toilet is like, whoa, wow. Why you would bring third world people like that into the West is quite beyond me. But nonetheless, they arrived. And they've put quite a large group of them. So they've got a few apartments, and there must be 25 of them or something like that in these apartments. So they discover this park with nice with the manicured grass and the nicely trimmed trees, and it's a public park. It's not a private park. But they decide that they want it for themselves, and they just sort of move in, and they come on every sunny day or every day that isn't raining. They just arrive en masse sort of early in the morning, and the whole park belongs to them. No one else is allowed to come in. Now there's only white people around or them. So if you try and come along and use the outdoor gym, they'll just converge all around you and surround you and tell you in no uncertain terms, this park belongs to us. You can only come here when we're not here. While we're here, you're not allowed. And if you try and explain, but it's a public park, then you want to I'll kick the shit out of you, mate. How do you like that? And so they respond in quite violent terms. So you can't use the park. Now, while they're in the park, they've got their ghetto blasters. They make a hell of a noise and leave a hell of a mess. They're certainly not tidy. They can do what they want, as long as they want. Now, if you complain about it, you go to the council. The council won't do anything. Well, Mr. Billy Bob, can I just ask if you're a racist? I mean, are you? Is your name Hitler? And you get that sort of attitude from the council. They won't do anything. No, nothing to do with being a racist or Hitler. These people have taken over the whole park, and they won't allow anyone to come in. I mean, excuse me, it's a public park. The council owns the park. I want you to do something about it. We're not going to do something just because Hitler wants to do. You get that attitude. Finally, you'll get the police to come out, but only if you say, well, look, they've made physical threats. What did you do to make them do those threats? So that this is coming back to a two-tier policing thing, where if they do something bad, it's because they were provoked. If the white person does something bad, it's because you're a fucking Nazi. That's why you did something bad. And But eventually the police, and eventually these people are moved on, and they get distributed around other, but their behavior is very different. And another bunch of Islander people, this is while we're in that same place actually, were put in an apartment block, 3 or 4 doors down, and they were the same thing. They hung out on their porch until all hours of the morning, with ghetto blasters making a hell of a noise. I mean, you could hear them a mile away. And if you go and ask them to look, do you mind? We got to get up in the morning and go to work with them. And they would take it as you're disrespecting me. It's an insult. You're trying to offend me. I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to be even louder now just to show you who's boss around here. Now, people with those behavioral attitudes, they're incapable of existing in anything resembling polite, reasonable society. And so when people talk about white flight and moving away from those sort of people, it's about behavioral. It has nothing to do with race. It's all about behavior. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.